Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you guys so much for tuning into this brand new interview. I have someone today, man, I've actually wanted to talk to her for quite some time. She's been doing a lot of stuff with independent wrestling television, whether that's Camp Leapfrog, whether that's, just main stuff on there as well. She also has a Spanish show as well, as far as I'm well aware of. So she's also doing it as well. But not only that, she's also a former professional wrestler. Some matches I do want to point out that she did have were absolutely amazing versus Samantha Heights. Go check that out as well. And if you search up this individual, you're going to see a lot of her matches. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let me introduce you to the one and only Sam Leterna. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well. How are you doing today, Matt?
Pretty good. I mean, obviously, like I mentioned before, this is technically the first time we're actually talking. So this is cool to get a conversation going.
Yeah, absolutely. It's different when you're interacting just via texting on social media and then having that face to face. I feel that way a lot of the times when I interview people too. I'm like, oh, awesome. Now we're getting intimate, you know?
Of course. And speaking about your interviewing, you do have a show on YouTube called Wrestle, where you do interviews such stars such as Platinum Max Caster, who did sign with AEW. There's a lot of stuff that you're doing in 2020. And I feel like that this year was, of course, with the pandemic and all, such a huge deal. But at another point, it looked like it was a blessing in disguise.
Oh, yeah. I would say that once lockdown happened in New York State in March, it was just around the time where I was starting to feel really restless. I hadn't wrestled for about 5 months at that point, and I had told myself I wasn't going to be back in the wrestling business in any capacity. So I don't know, I just got this itch, and I was like, I feel like I still have something to contribute. I know that I can talk. I got a mouth on me, so let me use this and let me use the connections I've made through wrestling for 4 years to start an interview channel and see what happens. And it's just been a domino effect from there. I've had so much luck, I'd say, by having Chikara contact me to do Action Arcade, and then also having Chris Levin have me come on as like a co-writer for Camp Leapfrog, which was a totally new type of endeavor for me, writing a wrestling show, a really kooky wrestling show. Yeah, and just everything's just happened one after the other. Like, I guess Jerry from IWTV, our lovely owner of Independent Wrestling TV, liked what I did on Camp Leapfrog and wanted to, have me come on and help out with certain projects and do segments. And I'm just loving being able to be creative and help this growing brand, because we do want IWTV to be what people think of when they're accessing independent wrestling and information on indie wrestling.
Absolutely. And when it comes to independent wrestling, I mean, it's such a special entity, especially when you have an access library like IWTV, where there's so much stuff on there. Of course, you mentioned about Camp Leapfrog. I do got to ask, being able to have creative access to something like with Camp Leapfrog, what was that reaction like when you got that okay of like, okay, this is all me, this is going to be my idea? Like, what was that feeling like?
So, I mean, yes, there are a lot of my ideas that go into Camp Leapfrog, but I would be remiss if I didn't say Chris Levin is the brainchild of Camp Leapfrog. Like, this was definitely his conception. But we like to tell people, like, Chris is the big picture guy and I'm the details person. So this is why we work so well together. I kind of, I figure out the little nitpicky things in terms of like making sense and what might work for the future, whereas Chris just has all of these amazing ideas and we just make them flow really well together. But I think Chris and I both have this affinity for like cheesy stuff, corny content, and I think we just got lucky given the 2020 that everyone's had. People are just kind of, satiated by this escape your world wrestling experience like Camp Leapfrog, because it's so bizarre, it's so wacky. We have adults playing campers that are supposed to be 12 to 16 years old. So it's just about, buying in for an hour or two and, coming along for the ride. There's a lot of talent on our shows, aside from our kooky antics. So I think people have really been able to bite into it.
Absolutely. And you can definitely catch the next Camp Leapfrog which is going to be known as Sam Leterna's Slumber Party. It's going to be on Saturday, November 28th. It's going to be exclusively on Independent Wrestling TV on Facebook, free for charge, so you don't have to pay anything. Definitely go check that out. It's going to happen at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so make sure you guys go check that out as well. But going away from Camp Leapfrog a little bit, I do want to talk about Wrestle T. Wrestle T to me is such a unique format in terms of interviewing, because you get all these different independent wrestlers and personalities on your show, and it sounds how the title is. It's Wrestle Tea. It's really just getting that conversation, having a cup of tea with you, or whatever the case may be. Was there an idea to making this a consistent thing, or was it kind of a one-time idea that turned out to be a consistent thing?
Okay, I'll give you some tea, Mike. I don't know that I've ever told anyone this. I'm not going to mention the person's name, but a wrestler very, very close to me, or my circle, kind of just one day lit a fire under my ass. I hope I can say the word ass.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Lit a fire under my ass one day and just said, you really have to like put your ambition on the table and go for it. If you're going to do this, you cannot just keep, showing up and expecting things to happen. You have to make them happen. And this was a reality check for me. And I thought, let me see how one episode does. And I wanted to use someone who was a bit sensational, also a great talker, because I wasn't sure how I was going to do with my first interview. Sorry, that's my dog, Tata. So I enlisted the help of Darius Carter. We got some magic going, and people really took to it. Tata, please stop. I'm interviewing this dog over here. I'm not interviewing. I'm being interviewed. Oh my gosh. See,
I know, it's weird.
My mindset whenever I'm on a camera. But anyway, so after that one episode, I really got the ball rolling with that. Darius helped promote it. He still promotes it like once a month. He loved the interview. And that just really opened other people up who knew me, giving me a chance to actually do that kind of work at their shows. Like at Warriors Wrestling, I was doing coverage. At Wrestle Pro, I've done coverage, and just wherever IWTV sends me. But I wanted to make it a unique platform where we're talking about wrestling, and we're getting down to like wrestling theory, history of wrestling, just everything having to do with wrestling. I didn't want it to be like a silly thing like, oh, what's your favorite apple? Do you like green apples? Do you like red apples? Like, this isn't that kind of show. It's a show about wrestling. We're not here to talk about protein pancakes. You know what I'm saying? We're getting into the nitty gritty and sometimes a little bit of tea, professional tea, of course.
Right. And I love how a professional wrestler gets dialogue with all these other professional wrestlers, whether they're independent or whichever company they are a part of, just talk about wrestling.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that everyone has such a different inspiration for getting into wrestling as well. We don't all like the same people. We don't all have the same experiences, right? Coming from different schools, different backgrounds, different parts of the world and country. So just honing in on the experience of like the independent wrestler specifically as well. While it would be awesome to cover, AEW, WWE starter like under contract, and that of course is a goal. I really want it to also be a platform where I can grow and where independent wrestlers can grow and feel safe telling their story to me, because I think that there's maybe an implicit trust, knowing that I have wrestled as well, so I get it, and I'm not looking to exploit any part of someone's wrestling experience, if that makes sense, or like chop up an interview and lie. Essentially, that does get done. I don't do it, but yeah.
Right. And what I also like too is that transition from a professional wrestler to a broadcaster, it seems like a smooth transition for some, but for a lot, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to really get out of your comfort zone and to really make that adjustment of getting the interviews done, getting who to interview, getting the questions and the conversation going. Was that transition easy, or was that a challenge?
I actually found that it was a pretty smooth transition for me. I'm not saying that I have like a perfect presentation or anything like that, but I'm a really good listener in my real walking non-wrestling life as well. I'm very, conversational as well. So it kind of all fell into place. I don't know if this will make sense to the people watching, but with wrestling, I always had to work extra, extra hard to get something down and really, hone what I did in the ring. Whereas with broadcasting and interviews and segment hosting, I feel like it's come very naturally to me. Like still, I work hard. I'm always like on meetings and brainstorming with other people for different projects. But this just seems like the path that the universe wants me to be on, as opposed to when I was wrestling, where everything was kind of, honestly, always a bit of a struggle, and I never really felt good about my matches and stuff. I mean, everyone feels that way with wrestling, even if you're like, a top person, you're always going to have that little bit of doubt. But for me, it's been totally seamless. Right now, I'm just trying to polish my on-camera presentation because sometimes I get a little excited. And my excitement takes hold of me. So I got to just, I think, take it back a notch sometimes.
Right, but you also do have that passion. You have that passion of professional wrestling, not only in the ring, but also outside of the ring, in front of the camera. And that's what I think is influential more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd hope that people that watch and, new subscribers, if they get anything from Wrestle T, it's that, this is about independent wrestling and this is for the love of wrestling. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't love wrestling. I don't know how anyone can even be involved in pro wrestling if there's no passion. It's not something where there's this automatic like financial return or, a ton of spots available at the top, right? Especially for broadcasters, that's a slimmer margin pool, So yeah, I want my passion to shine through. I want the people I'm interviewing, I want their passion to shine through as well. And I'd like to think that the people I've chosen, I've, thought out well enough to know that my audience will, that passion will translate to my audience from those people.
Absolutely. And once again, Sam, you are passionate on what you're doing, and I do respect and love that as a fellow broadcaster myself. But speaking about that, I do have a hot or Wrestle T question for you.
Okay.
So the question I do have, and probably people are wondering, of course, you're still in your early stages of your career as a broadcaster. But if the opportunity came, of course, we're in a pandemic, so not everything's great as of this moment. But if you were to have a call from one Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, can you give us the tea of what company you would possibly sign with, if given the option?
Oh my. Well, I think for political reasons, it's not right to pick just one. What I will say is I think that Impact is being fully and properly served by Gia Miller. I love what she's doing as a broadcaster there. She's also a really talented wrestler. So Gia's got Impact on lock. And I wish her the best. As far as AEW and WWE go, I was talking to a wrestler about this week. I'm really more concerned with being somewhere that's going to allow me to push myself creatively and, really honor the wrestlers, not just do like post-match interviews that are kind of just flat. So something that is more involved for me is what I would be looking for, I guess, for TV. I don't just want to be like, the Maria Kanellis backstage interviewer where you're like in and out, not to take anything away from her, but I want to develop things. I don't just want to interview. So a place that's going to give me opportunity essentially is what I'm interested in. And if WWE or AEW were interested, I love the South, Atlanta and the Tampa area sound lovely. So yeah, I would be open to any opportunity. You have to seize anything that you get, I think, and that's what I've been doing in 2020. Who knows what the future holds? It's definitely a long-term goal, though. Television contract, 100%. That's what I want.
Absolutely. But you are doing a lot of big things for the collective. Of course, for independent TV, you did a recent vlog about that where you interviewed such talents as Nasty Leroy and other talents as that. So can you talk about, because you've done a lot for the collective, because the collective kind of seems like the premier venue at the moment during the pandemic for all independent wrestlers to really showcase what they're doing, whether, if they're not signed with AEW or Impact or WWE. So
Oh yes.
what's that opportunity like for you to kind of be in that same venue as all these independent professional wrestlers that are still looking for a potential contract?
I was really honored that Brett Lauderdale allowed IWTV and myself to come and do coverage, especially given the pandemic, where having press around is possibly not ideal. So for him to let us in and have additional bodies in there was fantastic. The show itself, I think, is a fantastic platform where people who are already rising get elevated to a certain status, and it's kind of make or break for the people whose first or second times it is at these big events like Spring Break and all that. So to kind of see people break out and literally see it happen, like Juicy, Juicy, right? Like the big Tongan dude. Yeah, like just seeing him go from like literally setting up the ring at the Collective one day to like people appreciating that hustle and him coming from across the country and giving him a spot. And now he's getting flown out like within a month later to do like a bunch of shows everywhere. It just goes to show that like that's how big the Collective is. You show up at the Collective, you're probably going to get more bookings. You're definitely going to get more exposure, So for me to be there and interview like 30 to 40 people in one weekend, it was a lot of work. It was exhausting, but it was so gratifying. The prep work into it, everything, just being nervous going into that kind of setting. Even though there were a lot of wrestlers from the Midwest and the Northeast that I knew there, it was a little nerve-wracking, but a fun experience nonetheless. And just getting to know people and also experience like the adrenaline, like secondhand from people right after their matches was really cool. And yeah, I also got to work with Glory Pro while I was out there. They're usually out of St. Louis, but they were in Indianapolis with the Collective. And it was really cool just being given the responsibility of like, okay, so-and-so, like Ethan Page, the North, those guys, they just had their match. We have to get them. They're sweating. We need that authenticity of post-match. Get them over here. So I was like kind of just corralling all of these big wrestlers and like trying to get them to my backdrop to do an interview. It was a cool experience. The whole Collective weekend, I think everyone will say it's exhausting. And I'm not even wrestling. I can only imagine how like Adrian Gray felt. He did like 10 matches, and Lee Moriarty. But it's exhausting, but extremely gratifying when you're on the way home and you just know like this is what I accomplished. I have months worth of content. Like I feel secure that I did my job for IWTV and for Wrestle too, of course, because you gotta get your own stuff into, right? This is a business. So yeah.
Of course. Absolutely. And again, just the excitement of being in a venue that, to me, I would even compare in 2020 to maybe even the 90s ECW arena back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And how special it is.
Oh, yeah. And I think, like, I mean, if we're going to call the Collective anything of the Indies, it's probably the WrestleMania of the Indies right now. That's kind of, I mean, it's not the ideal setting, right? We all have to social distance, masks, following these guidelines, which are necessary. But imagine what the Collective would have been like if there was no, COVID, and it was happening this year in Florida with like 100,000 people in town just for WrestleMania and the independent events that precede it. Would have been mind-blowing. It still was mind-blowing, but, Brett Lauderdale did what he had to do, kept it at a certain legal capacity, and still put on one hell of a show.
Absolutely. And again, Collective has done absolutely amazing, especially in 2020, like I mentioned before. But speaking about Sam Leterna, I do want to talk about a little bit about your broadcasting background. Of course, you have passion. Like I said, again, when it comes to broadcasting, was there any inspiration towards being as passionate as you are right now for broadcasting?
Well, to be honest, this is the last thing I ever saw myself doing in wrestling, doing pro wrestling broadcasting. But seriously, I just always thought like it's wrestling or bust. But I don't necessarily have like people that I look up to in the broadcasting realm, but I have people that I thoroughly enjoy watching. And I'm all about that emotion I feel when I see a wrestler, when I see a backstage correspondent. Like, for example, someone like Bobby Heenan, just he just makes me laugh. He makes me believe, even though it's the most ridiculous, jokey stuff that he would tend to say. Rest his soul. So people like that just inspire me to like derive a certain feeling and impart that to the audience, and hopefully get that out of a wrestler too. But I have no broadcasting experience. I just like to talk a lot. That's basically where we're at. I did not go to school for broadcasting. I graduated with a bachelor's in art history and curatorial studies, and here I am now.
Yeah. And everything comes in full circle, of course. But hey, it turned out for the best. Of course, you're doing what you're doing with the YouTube channel, of course, with Independent Wrestling TV. And of course, you're getting opportunity to just speak up with all these independent pro wrestlers, as I mentioned before, even online. And one of the things I do want to point out as well for Wrestle T is the fact that you're embracing the Latinx culture. And that's something that I feel like is absolutely special. I know that you did one in particular with Danny Limelight. I know you did that with Gino Medina, and just kind of, really embracing that culture. So when was that inspiration for you to kind of add in to embrace your culture, to really showcase what being a Latino or Latinx, in your interviews?
Well, I mean, first off, it was Hispanic Heritage Month. So just, perfect time to have that platform for people to speak, right? This is a business. It's good to capitalize on all of these things. But first and foremost, I am very proud of being Venezuelan American. And I, over the past couple of months on Twitter, have gotten the opportunity to connect with a lot of Latinx wrestlers around the country and just see what they're doing. And I started to notice that, a lot of Latin wrestlers are usually grouped in the same category of this like luchador wrestler, right? Like wearing a mask or acting like very stereotypically Latin. And I've consciously seen a lot of the new generation of wrestlers like Gino, like Danny, still embrace their culture, but like individually be their own character and their own person, So getting to see people merge the two without like kind of having that exterior pressure of like I have to be a luchador or like I have to be like this just specific character. It always kind of pissed me off. Like I think Eddie Guerrero did the quintessential like Latin character and it was very endearing, but maybe like 15-20 years later we need to have a new conversation about Latin wrestlers, and given just the platform that has been provided for like LGBTQ wrestlers in the community, same with African American wrestlers. I just thought that it was my part, it was me doing a very small part to just honor people that I, look up to and respect their hustle. People like Danny Limelight, people like Gino Medina. I wish I could have gotten one more interview in with a lady, a Hispanic lady wrestler, but it just didn't happen. But yeah, I think that we should be showcased for the individuals we are, as opposed to being grouped all together as Latinos. I don't know, for me growing up, I feel like my mom definitely like taught me that like, yes, we're Latin, but there's so many differences between Latin people. A Central American person is different from a South American person. A South American or Central American person is different from like a Spaniard. We have different cultural values, different foods. Different accents and dialects, so we're different, and I was just trying to honor that through a legacy in Gino Medina with Mexican lucha wrestling, and with Danny Limelight, who's just an NYC Puerto Rican, one of my NYC people. Love them. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's special to, like I mentioned before, share the culture, to showcase that culture. And it's so great, as a Latinx man myself, it's so great to really see that different, because everybody has different stories, everybody has different backgrounds. We don't all share one similar type of trait, if that makes sense. So, it's always great to just really showcase that culture and know that it's in different aspects of life. It's not just a certain type of wrestler in a luchador mask, like you mentioned before. It's more, there's people, like I said, Danny Limelight, who I've seen in the independent scene all the way 2 years ago. And just to see him do what he does best, kill it on AEW Dark, and to just continue, showcasing that Latino pride. It's always awesome.
Absolutely. What's your ethnic background?
So I'm currently a Hispanic. Not currently. Why did I say currently? I'm just a Hispanic. I come from my.
I'm currently Hispanic. Tomorrow.
No. It's nothing like that. But anyways, like I mentioned before, I am Hispanic. I'm Hispanic on my mom's side. My dad's side is obviously from the Jewish heritage, and
Cool.
yeah. And I actually, surprisingly, I did a presentation on this actually this past week, and literally telling my professor, because I am taking Latinx studies, just to have that perspective of just not being identified as Latino immediately because of the way I talk, the way I present myself instead of the regular stereotype. I feel like that it was cool to really express myself and express the real feelings, because I really had to pull some stuff, some research, just like Octavio Paz's theory on masks, for example. That was something absolutely amazing that I could kind of relate to, because the mask inside of me is not, that I do have, not just being positive all the time. I do have that negativity in life that I do deal with. So it's actually awesome to really showcase, what I am, which is, a Latinx.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone in the United States is, mixed to some extent or another. So it's just about embracing, all of the multifaceted sides of oneself, and not suppressing certain aspects of one's heritage and whatnot. And that's what I've learned growing into adulthood.
Well, speaking about adulthood, I do want to thank you for being a part of this interview, Sam. But before we go, I do have one final question for you. So,
Sure.
Of course, as a professional wrestler and a broadcaster, you've been killing it on both sides. Like I mentioned before, in the wrestling side, of course, matches with Samantha Heights and so on and so forth. Being in promotions like CCW, and then of course on the broadcasting side, being a part of independent wrestling TV, Wrestle T. There's so much. If you had the chance to interview anybody in wrestling, whether that's dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Wow, just one person.
Or it could be top three.
Answer. Okay, I'll do top three, because I mean, I have to give it to Randy Orton. I'd interview him like in my sleep. Like that's my top living, just because I so respect and look up to him. He's like the person that really like got me into wrestling and staying into wrestling as a kid. So him, the late great Kerry Von Erich. I love the Von Erichs. I love WCCW. Just big old school wrestling fan. So would have loved to like interview Kerry Von Erich, or really like a ton of other people from WCW. I won't mention WCCW rather. And then I think it would have been really cool, and I think our personalities would have meshed both on and off camera. Roddy Piper would have been a really cool interview, for sure. I feel like we would have gotten along really well. So yeah, and just getting to honor legends like that more often in general would be cool. But with the pandemic, it's not ideal for these older ladies and gentlemen to be coming out to our independent wrestling shows. But yeah, so just two legends and a living legend in Randy Orton. Those would be my top for sure. And I guess it would be cool to interview like Tony Khan. That would be super cool. I'd love to pick his brain about like what made him, make the crazy decision to start a wrestling company and it's starting a soccer team and a football team. But hey, more power to him.
Absolutely. Well, Sam, once again, I do want to thank you. We finally did the interviewer getting interviewed, which I think is absolutely awesome. Make sure you guys go check out Wrestle Team. Make sure you guys go check out Sam Leterna's Slumber Party. I almost messed that up there, on Camp Leapfrog, which again is going to happen on Saturday, November 28th. Make sure you guys go check that out. Free on Facebook, so you don't have to pay anything. That's absolutely amazing. But not only that, Sam, once again, keep killing it. I do appreciate the conversation, and I did enjoy it, absolutely. But make sure you guys go follow Sam on Instagram. Link will be down in the description. Same thing with Twitter. Same thing where you can find her all on social media. So make sure you guys do that.
Say hi. I'm very friendly on social media, just not in person. No, I'm just kidding. I'm friendly in person.
And of course, she will definitely give you the tea on everything professional wrestling. And until we meet again, guys, thank you guys so much. like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys in the next interview.